Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Mr. John Bond. John has been immersed in books and the expression of ideas for over 35 years. His newest novel, being released in 2026, is To the End of Reckoning, which is a high concept speculative thriller that asks what happens when history stops being debatable. It's going to be published by his Hysteria. It is distributed by Simon and Schuster. John is also a reader, author, and publishing consultant. He brings a deep understanding of getting started on writing and then publishing a book. He's also the author of a three-book series, The Little Guides, which covers writing a book, but also authoring journal articles and giving poster presentations. And today he's here. He's going to share a little bit more about his journey, tell about kind of share a little bit about how he got into being an author, the books he's come out with, as well as the class he's doing. So, the guys that he's come out with on helping others. So, John, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and hearing your story. And welcome to Southern Reads.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to connecting with your listeners and with you as well. So, real treat for me.
So the opening question that I always like to ask all my guests is kind of the backstory of how you became an author and what kind of inspired you to start writing.
I like to tell the story when I was 10 or 11, my parents and I would go to estate sales in Princeton, New Jersey. I lived in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, but we'd go to these beautiful homes and they would be selling everything in the house. The things that were at the very end were the things nobody wanted, like appliances or lawnmowers. And unbelievably, there would be 5, 10, 20 boxes of books that would go for many, many years ago, $5 for these wonderful books. And my parents indulged my young adult need for knowledge, and they would buy these boxes and boxes of books. I would bring them home and go through them like they were a treasure chest, most of them well beyond my understanding, some of them nonfiction, but many of them just beautiful sets and gorgeous books, some of which I treasure to this day. I think that really got me immersed in the idea of books and curiosity and knowledge, and then eventually creativity to think about what's in all of these and what stories are they telling, even if they're nonfiction. What is the thing that they're trying to express? And it led me to be a librarian, and then it led me to a long career in publishing. And during that entire journey, I I read widely, both in fiction and nonfiction. And with the fiction that I read, I was always attracted to the what if of the world and how the what if of novels can show us the deficits of society and how we can be the best of ourselves as well. So I think that's really what led me to being interested in authoring and my love of books.
So you start writing, and when you started out your writing career, did you have a particular idea of where you wanted to go with your work or what you exactly wanted to talk about or really wanted to focus on, or were you just writing just to see where your creativeness would go?
Well, a couple threads there. One, with my creative writing, we can all go back to those times in high school or college that we were trying to express ourselves, and I'm sure many of us could look back on it and blanch at what some of that writing was and some of those things that we were trying to express in a young or immature fashion, or not even understanding how to express ourselves. And then as I got busy with life, I would still try to occasionally play with creative fiction, but a job and raising a family made it a pretty much of a challenge to do that in a significant degree. As I started to work in publishing for a long time and connect with people on how to write a book or how to communicate in the academic world, I started to come up with the idea of writing nonfiction books. So creativity sort of got put on hold, but expressed in other ways. And then with the nonfiction books, they were very, very easy for me to write because I'm happy or sorry to say it was simply just putting down everything that was in my head. I would talk to people throughout the year many times of how to even start writing a nonfiction book and how do I try to tackle writing 500 pages on this technical topic. So a lot of those answers are second nature to me, fortunate for me, including, proposals and queries and finding a publisher and all those other things. And then as I moved away from a full-time job in publishing and moved into publishing consulting, the creative energy started to reemerge. And that's when I really started to look at, obviously, first short stories and then some preliminary drafts of a novel, and then moving on to a few fledged novels. And I'm also very interested in the screenplay format right now as well. So it's just in later years that I started to really find the time and energy to devote towards creative fiction, knowing that nonfiction always is sort of takes up a space in my brain.
So, going through your career, you've been able to really talk about a lot of things, but you kind of have fallen into the realm of science fiction. And what do you enjoy the most about science fiction?
Yeah, first I may for the novel To the End of Reckoning, it falls under the category of speculative fiction, which is either a subgenre of science fiction or a genre above science fiction. I'm particularly drawn to speculative fiction because of that what if aspect I referred to. I like to liken it for older people such as myself to the Twilight Zone series, and for younger people such as yourself to the Black Mirror series. And it really can hold a mirror up, as I said, to society, whether digital or real life, and show its flaws and perhaps some rudimentary answers. That appealed to me first, and then as I would more dive more into actual fiction, when I was very young, the Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov stories were really interesting, and I saw them at the time once again as a reflection of society. So many of those great classic early science fiction works, including dystopian ones such as 1984, are really a reflection of what was going on in the world with the battle between the West and the East with communism versus the East the Western way of life, capitalism or whatever. And so they were thinly veiled as veiled disguises about those. And so any of that true science fiction, and then even start to think about the original Star Trek series, which was just social commentary about everything going on with race in the United States, with class, with the economic issues, were really what attracted me. And now I think those genres, science fiction, speculative fiction, and even creative fiction, are in a much more mature and nuanced place. It's a little bit less of a sledgehammer that, the aliens represent one race and, the Earthlings are representing the other race. But they still do it in a pretty effective way and will tackle some very difficult topics, including now such as AI or climate change.
Do you think a lot of people, when they hear a science fiction, you talk a lot about really good deep conversations, but when they hear science fiction, they think of it as like, oh, it's just fantasized, it's kind of more of a fantasy land. Do you think people are going to think that a lot of the topics that you're talking about in science fiction are just kind of for the universe itself, and maybe they are not going to be fully aware of the impact of it?
Yeah, I first of all, I think there are a lot of subgenres inside science fiction. I know there's hard science fiction, soft science fiction. I mean, when you look at the popularity of the movie The Martian and then Project Hail Mary, both of those really have some science in them, but they're really just great stories told through the lens of Mars in one place and a space vehicle in another one. But there are tons of others that are there are space romantasy, there's space horror now. So I think space has really started to take up a very broad area. And then even when you start to think about the superhero movies, much of them are dabbling in what could also be considered science fiction. I think going back to my era where science fiction was seen as a very nerdy thing and it was seen as negative, I think thankfully in today's culture, we start to think about things such as the Big Bang Theory, and we start to think about how much of nerd culture, and I'm using that in a positive way, has become uh, something of widespread interest and a plus, and people wear that badge appropriately with honor. So I think there are a lot more acceptance of science fiction, and people see it as great storytelling and not just something about, quantum physics and a vehicle I'm not going to understand.
So, this book that you've are coming out with, To the End of Reckoning, share with me a little bit about what kind of the backstory is behind this book and what readers can expect when they read it for themselves.
Sure. Well, To the End of Reckoning, as I said, is a speculative thriller. The premise is, what if accidentally a group of people found films of every historical event in the history of mankind? And a group of experts come together and find out that they're not CGI or generated imagery. They're not created by AI or artificial intelligence, and they're not reenactments. So this group initially, and then long term, the world has to come to the has to settle with this understanding that how could these films have been made? Who could have made them? And why were they put in such an obscure place? And so at the base of the novel is really the understanding of truth. And I came to write the book starting in 2020 when I started to look a lot of what's going on in our culture right now, where we see, no matter your political opinion, we see the same images or the same item, but come to drastically different conclusions over them. So I started to think, could there be something that we can all agree on? We all agree up is up and down is down. I mean, I agree. I hope most of us do. And we agree gravity's a thing. But past that, what are some other things that we can all commonly agree on for interpretation? And when I say all, I'm agreeing there's 95% is what I'm shooting for here. I understand no 100% of everybody's not going to happen. There's going to be somebody that takes an extreme view. But could we all agree on the same truths and the same um, items to help us move forward as a society in whatever direction we want to move in?
Did you do any research going into this or have any interviews with people that were kind of knowledgeable about this subject to help kind of better prepare you to write the kind of synopsis of the book?
Yeah, first of all, I'm an enormous fan of Wikipedia when used in the appropriate way. I'm not suggesting it's the be all and end all source, but when you're getting to settled topics, it is a great entree into it. I had to learn about a lot about the actual film part of it and projectors and those things. So I learned a lot about what a film is made of and how it is composed. That was really great. I was able to do all of that online. I've got a great friend who is a history professor in Rowan University in Southern New Jersey. Shout out Bill Carrigan, who is a great resource for me when it comes to all things history. And then being an ex-librarian, or former librarian, I should say, and being a book nerd myself, most of my research was done right at my computer or at my beloved libraries, and didn't require as many interviews as necessary because a lot of it happens to be more of a detective story. How did these films get there? Who put them there? And what are they all about? So while there is some history involved in it, it's not an enormous deep dive into one particular history event.
How long does it normally take you to write a book from start to end?
To the End of Reckoning is a medium-sized novel, so it's not a doorstop, but it's not a short story. I outline my work extensively before I actually start. I also give myself permission to deviate from the writing of it, the outlining of it. So because I said it was going to do XYZ, I'm open for it to doing ABC. So I did a lot of outlining, and then when the actual writing came down, and I would feel the groove of it, it took me only 6 months to write the novel. Of course, then there was another 6 months of connecting with fellow writers, connecting with friends who read the manuscript and then gave me feedback. Feedback varied greatly. It's great to be in a circle of people, and I'm fortunate to be in a writers group. It's great to be in a circle of people that can give you educated, honest feedback. It's nice to give it to your significant other or your parent or your child and have them say how wonderful you are, but you're really looking for somebody that looks at it with a discerning eye, somebody that says, oh, this is great, but what about this? Or this character wouldn't have done that or that type of thing. So that feedback was very valuable. And so I made some changes based on that. That was probably another 6 months. And then through the whole process of finding a publisher or agent, and then the time the publisher took. So the writing of it and the review of it took place around 2000.
Now, I know that you work with a lot of authors about publishing and kind of guides to help them to write a book and publish it. So, you come out with the three-book series, The Little Guides. Tell me a little bit about what kind of inspired you to want to give back to other authors coming up and come out with these guides of of helping them be able to craft novels and be able to go about the publishing process easy.
Yeah, my first book was called You Can Write and Publish a Book, and it quotes a no, I think a 2001 study that said 80, they interviewed 1,000 people nationwide in the United States, that and out of 1,000 people, 82% of everybody feels they have a book in them. And that really made an impression on me. And what it really is, people wanting to express themselves, tell their story, share their knowledge or their particular niche interests. And so that was really when when I started to think about how people really want to either be writers or to write or to blog or whatever the case may be, or to publish a book. And I had talked to a lot of people in my day job as to their interest in becoming a writer, many of them very busy professionals that had full careers other than writing. And they would really want to know how to crack that nut and how to do that. So these books take you in a hand-holding, easygoing matter from beginning to end, starting with coming up with an idea, vetting that idea, going through the outlining process, whether that's a table of contents or plotting for a fiction book, going through and trying to incrementally knock every parts off bit by bit, getting to a completed version, you doing self-editing, and then moving that on to sharing with friends or colleagues for them to understand, for you to understand parts that could improve. And then, a final edit, and then once again, trying to find a publisher or agent. So these books, the original one, You Can Write and Publish a Book, or the most current one I have, The Little Guide to Getting Your Book Published, and that's by Bloomsbury Publishing, are are a result of the many conversations I had with people wanting to express themselves and feeling that they would like to write a book. And it's a human nature thing. We're storytellers by nature.
When you were working with people, what tended to be the number one main issue that you saw happening all the time where people were having the most trouble in?
Most trouble in, I would say, is one of two things. One is giving themselves permission to see themselves as an expert or having something to say. I use the example of writing your origin story or your parents' or your grandparents' origin story. I say to somebody, just sit down and write 50 pages about what your childhood was like. And people are like, nobody's going to be interested in that. And I say, listen, if your great great grandfather or great great grandmother had 50 pages of what their childhood would like, and you possess that document, that would be the most valuable thing that you possessed. And that writing of that story it requires you to give yourself permission to express yourself and tell whether it's a fictional or nonfiction story. So that's the first thing that the challenge that people have, getting over seeing putting something to paper or putting something on the computer is a natural response, and you have the seat at the table to do that. And I think you should do that. And the other one just comes down to time. People constantly complain about time. They're very busy. I understand everybody's busy. I say, listen, you make time to have 3 meals a day, maybe four. You make time to watch TV, probably more than you like. You make time to do your favorite hobby or to connect with friends. You just have to set aside maybe 20 minutes the first 3 weeks, half hour the next 3 weeks, and just build into a habit of 3, 4, 5, 6, hopefully 7 days a week, trying to sit down and chip away at writing something. You may get through 10 pages and say, this isn't working. Everybody's done that. And then just pick up a different and start again. So giving yourself permission to express yourself and finding time, which you surely have, to express yourself a bit day by day.
When you were doing the teachings, was there any tips that you had found that and learned during that time that you wish you had known when you first started writing?
A more recent one I really, really love, and I find some people do it, most people don't know about it. Almost all PC and Mac computers, word processing programs have a read aloud function on the work, on your work. And so after you've done that initial writing, the most valuable thing I've learned is to have that played aloud and you listen to it. Your ear is going to catch so many things. You've missed a word that your eyes are putting into the document, or it just sounds awkward or wordy, or a run-on sentence or short. A great way to self-edit is using that play aloud function and really just listening for what makes the best a version of what you're hearing, of what you're expressing, rather. Another one that I'd have to say, another lesson that I've learned is going back to time is there's a famous 10,000 hour analogy with Malcolm Gladwell. I think it's been since discounted, but I still buy into it that, you wouldn't start writing your first short story and then expect, to get on top of the New York Times bestseller list. Has it happened? Sure. But you wouldn't start learning tennis and then think you're going to win Wimbledon in a month. So what it just requires is a lot of practice and a lot of time, and you just need to grind away. Write something, put it aside, write something else, put it aside. You need to just find that time to do it and to develop that muscle in your writing that allows you to grow as a writer and grow in ways to express yourself.
Of all the books that you've published and have come out, which one are you most proud of, or one that you look at and you're like, I'm really shocked at how well this book came out?
Well, on the nonfiction side, the one I referred to, the little guide to getting your book published, Simple Steps to Success, is the one that encompasses the most knowledge that I have. And that's all the way from creating the work, getting it published, but it also talks about afterwards having an author promotional platform, how you connect with your readers, the reason why that's important. So it really is literally from the very, very beginning of the process to the very end. And so I'm most proud of that one because it's the most complete, not that the other ones are incomplete, but it covers everything you would need to know if you are coming to book publishing or book writing and creativity for the first time. On the creative side, I'm just super thrilled about the novel To the End of Reckoning that comes out in a few weeks as of the date we're recording right now, because I've been a fiction reader for way too many years, and I'm just thrilled that History of Publishing has decided to publish it, and that I'm even more thrilled that Simon and Schuster are distributing it. So that's really been a special for me to have something on the creative brain get published as well. So probably a dual answer there.
Now, circling around publishing, this has been a kind of a heated discussion about, I think for a couple of years now, about should people go through traditional publishing or do self-publishing? From your experience, do you recommend new authors to do self-publishing or traditional publishing?
I tell people to start out and look at your motivations for wanting to publish at all. If you want to get on top of the New York Times bestseller list, you're going to have to go through traditional publishing. Are there self-published books that have gotten on the top of the bestseller list? Of course, but they are more likely the exception, except in specific genre fiction. If you're looking to express yourself and you want to have the immediacy and the gratification of having something published and trying to build it incrementally, tiny bit by tiny bit, self-publishing may work for you. There is something in the middle, hybrid publishing. Let me just take a minute to describe the three and then tell about which one that I recommend. Traditional publishing You write it, the publisher takes all the risk, spends all the money, pays you a small royalty per book. On the opposite side, self-publishing, you write it, you find a publishing vehicle like Kindle Direct or Ingram, and they publish it maybe for a small amount of money. You do all the promotion and all the marketing, and then you make most of the money, but not all the money back. Hybrids in the middle, you find a publisher that will do some of the work and some of the marketing. You pay them a fee, and they just pay you a higher royalty. The most important thing is every author, traditional or self-publishing, is going to have to market and promote their work. Many authors do not like to discuss their work. They don't think it's their place, and they feel uncomfortable with it. I respect that. But you can't self-publish and then be sad if there is little to no demand for your work because you're not promoting it. I'm here connecting with you and your audience, but I'm also marketing and promoting my work, but I'm also marketing and promoting myself. I hate to be so crass about it, but you have to be able to do that. Connect with your audience, connect with listeners or readers or bloggers or people that watch YouTube channels, and to be able to give them a reason to find you interesting and potentially find your work interesting. So if you're going to self-publish, you need to embrace that in an enormous way. If that is uncomfortable for you, maybe you look towards hybrid or traditional publishing, but you'll still have to market it and promote it then as well.
Yeah, I've heard different things from different people from that have been in all kinds of publishing. They some love the traditional publishing where they can work with it, but I've also have had people that love hearing the more self-publishing. They have more creative control, they have more freedom over what they do, so they tend to like doing that more. Um, Lastly, what I'll ask is, to anyone listening, if they are interested in maybe writing, but maybe they don't know where to start or have an idea of where to begin, what advice do you have for them of where they need to start and how they can start writing? Because I know everything in the writing thing can be a little chaotic and can be overwhelming at times. How can people go about writing and not feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, the initial thing is picking a lane. Are you going to write memoir? Are you going to write romantasy? Are you going to write horror? And think about where your interests lie, and probably where most of your reading and current knowledge lies. And then when you're in that lane, I would start to think about what the larger theme is that you're trying to express. So you could say, well, romantasy, I'm going to write a story about somebody that's looking for the right person and they find the right person, but there's obstacles. It has to be more than that. You have to find something that's unique in you that you want to express through this story. I'm really a big fan of walks by yourself, even if you have your earbuds in, not listening to anything that's distracting you, a podcast or an audiobook, but just really thinking and maybe listening to classical music or something and just working everything out in your head. Leave yourself a blank slate and say, okay, I'm interested in writing horror. I'm interested in writing about a high school in peril. And that's my premise. What is the theme I'm trying to express? And then just start to take walks wherever you live and just try to work it out in your head and then come back and sit down and get it on paper. If it doesn't work, you have to give yourself permission to discard it and go do it all over again. But it's just a process like the old one. How do you start the journey of 1,000 miles? You begin with a single step. You can't see it as overwhelming. Just go one step at a time, giving yourself permission to back up anytime you need to.
Well, John, I appreciate you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today to share your story and to share your words and give some really good advice to a lot of up and coming authors. For people interested in learning more about your books, if they would like to check you out on the socials and just have maybe they have questions that didn't get answered today, where can they go to ask those questions and where can they go to connect?
Yeah, first, it was really great connecting with you and some really great, thoughtful, deep questions. So I appreciate those and I appreciate connecting with the listeners. The book To the End of History, To the End of Reckoning, rather, is published by Histria, but it's available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org and can be ordered at any bookstore. All my books are available at my website to learn about is books by John Bond, BOND.com, books by John Bond. And then I have a YouTube channel which has over 100 videos on writing and publishing. I urge you to check it out. YouTube.com/John Bond. And all three of those places, you can reach out to me for comment. Books by John Bond, YouTube.com. Oh, I forgot one as well. And Goodreads. I'm a big Goodreads person. You can connect with me through Goodreads as well. So I'd love to connect with anybody. I love questions. If there's anything we didn't touch on, please feel free to connect with me and make sure that you mention that you listen to Southern Read so I know where you came from as well. But this has been a great opportunity, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody today.
And I will put all of his information in the description box below. Just feel free to go check out the description box so that you can find all that information down there. Feel free to connect with me on the socials as well. You can reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at southern.reads. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcasts. And feel free to just check out the website, noahspodcasts.com. There you'll find links to all my socials, links to where the podcasts are available, and you'll just find some additional things on there. So feel free to go check that out. And of course, all those links will be in the description box too. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will catch you in the next episode of Southern Reads.